Welcome to Creatively Enhanced Podcast, where we spotlight extraordinary artists from all around the world. I'm Chantel, and today I'm honored to introduce our second place winner from the Color Play Abstract Art Contest and online exhibition at our gallery, Sev Art Gallery, Virginia Primozic. Virginia is a master of an unconventional yet stunning medium. She paints with paper. Using carefully selected papers applied to canvas with acrylic medium, she builds rich, layered compositions that mimic the depth and complexity of paint. Some papers speak for themselves with the perfect shade, while others require thoughtful layering to achieve just the right hue and intensity. Delicate, translucent organic papers to bold textural materials, each piece is a living experience in color, texture, and light. Inspired by collage greats like Peter Blake, Virginia has carved out a unique approach, using paper as her brush, canvas as her field, and color as her language. Her subjects are chosen with intention, whether they stir personal meaning, radiate beauty, or speak to a shared human experience. Virginia's work invites us to look beyond the surface and connect to a memory, a moment, or a feeling. It is an honor to have her with us today as we explore the vision behind her work and what drives her creative journey. Let's welcome Virginia to the Creatively Enhanced Podcast Show. Virginia, congratulations on earning second place in the Color Play Abstract Art Contest. Can you start by telling us a little bit about yourself and your journey as an artist?
Thank you. Thank you very much. It was an honor to see that award pop up in my email. I had to read it twice. Like, does this say what I think it says? So thank you very much for that honor. I am currently living in Gallup, New Mexico, which is very close to the Arizona border, and it's on the southern edge of the Navajo Nation. So it's kind of a strange place. I'm not from here. If you're not from here, it feels strange. It's what the Navajo people call a border town because it is on the border of the reservation. But it's also on Route 66, part of the mother road from Chicago to California. So there's a lot of tourist traffic here and a lot of art. Gallup has a lot of art, public art, Native American art. There's a branch of the UNM, University of New Mexico, here with a sizable art department. So I am surrounded by art. My own journey, I have to say, starts with my mom. My mom was a professional artist, and I don't have formal training in terms of an art degree or something like that, but I did get a lot of training from my mom. And one humorous anecdote I remember from my childhood, my siblings and I had a tin of crayons, and my mom taught us very early that the sky isn't always blue and the grass isn't always green, and you can't just, even with your crayons, paint a blue sky and green grass, because we had to observe. She taught us to observe carefully what color is it really. And even if we had like the deluxe 64 count box of crayons, that wasn't enough colors. So she had us unwrap our crayons, and we had to use the broad side, not the point, pull the flat side or the round side of the crayon across the paper and use multiple layers and blend and get the right colors. So a lot of our crayons were all flat on one side from this process. And I didn't think that was unusual until we had some friends visiting us and we were sharing our crayons, and they're asking, why are all your crayons flat on one side? It's like, well, we have to blend. So mom taught us, all of us, a lot about art and how to strive to render accurately and blend to get the colors that we really see. I didn't start my brilliant art career until later, because in my married life, we have 4 children, and I homeschooled those children kindergarten through grade 12. So my ideas about art, or what I thought I would like to accomplish in art, was just put on hold. We did play around in my mom's studio in the summers. We'd come to visit my mom, and the kids and I would all play with all of her art stuff during the summers. And it was actually in my mom's work that I first saw paper incorporated with the paint. My mom only used the paper for texture, so she would paint under the paper and over the paper, but she wasn't trying to create a collage or to create something that resembled a painting with the paper. But I would think over time, I would always be thinking about the paper, because that was my favorite thing to play with in her studio. And how far could you push that medium, not in a traditional collage sense where you're combining photographs or newsprint and a different objet into a new composition, but to just use the paper and nothing else but the paper and the color in the paper to create a new composition that had the effect of paint, that it would look like a painting, not a more traditional collage. And so that's been my focus from the beginning.
Wow, that is so impactful and powerful that your mom really helped shape your journey into becoming an artist and being able to step out of the box and stepping out of that crayon box, right? You mentioned how your mom would have you guys use the broad side of the crayon. And that is not a common thing that you hear, when you're coloring and blending, because not many children learn to do something so talented at such a young age. Do you believe that that has helped shape you even in today? Do you always like create and process like my mom taught me this and you apply that to every art piece that you create in your artwork now?
I would definitely say she affects my work just because of what I learned for her. It would be probably hard to pinpoint a specific thing. She passed away more than a decade ago, and I miss her very much. And I would love to be able to show her my work and get her feedback. She would be honest, if something was wrong in my work, she would tell me what I needed to correct, lovingly, of course. But I do miss that. I miss being able to share it with her.
I'm so sorry to hear about your mom, and today we honor her in this. So thank you for sharing that. So let's talk about your winning piece. As second place winner in the Color Play Abstract Art Contest and Group Exhibition, your winning piece, Gen Pop, it really stood out to me the most. What was the inspiration behind creating it, and what story or emotion were you hoping to share through this piece of work?
Thanks for that question. The title, I'll start with that, Gen Pop. My second daughter uh, helps me with a lot of my titles. She gives some of my work rock and roll titles or titles from popular culture. So this piece, full of squares, I kind of let the paper dictate the composition. I will give a plug here to the place where I do buy a lot of my paper. It mostly comes from Southeast Asia. There's Japanese lace paper, banana paper, unryu paper, all kinds of paper, but I get it from a supplier in Utah called Mulberry Paper and More. mulberrypaperandmore.com. They have a vast paper selection. And in that collection of paper, I ordered 5 different sheets of embossed paper. Usually when I just have a brand new sheet of paper, it's like Christmas. But I know I'm going to tear it up, cut it up, create the shapes in the paper that I need for whatever work is at hand. But when this embossed paper came, each piece had a slightly different pattern. That square pattern, in this case, was already in the paper. And when I saw it, I thought, I can't just tear this up. I have to use these squares as they are. So the paper itself was not in a standard size. I think it's 32 by 22. So I had to get custom canvases to fit that size. I can stretch my own canvases, but in this case, I chose not to. It was just faster to get them, to order them online. So the paper pretty much dictated the composition, all of those squares. And then I thought, well, I want it to be bright and I want it to be random, but not totally random. So I started with just one color. I think it was the hot pink. And I put in each row, I put one square of hot pink. Then I picked a second color and put that to the right as it sat on my easel. It was to the right of the hot pink. And then I put that same color next to the hot pink in each row and so on. So then I picked a third color, a fourth color. So it looks kind of random, but it isn't really, because row by row, the colors stay in the same order. And at the end of the row, then they loop back to the beginning of that row. There's a pattern that is there, even though it's not that obvious. And then there were those tiny little squares in the embossed pattern in between the rows and columns. And that painting just needed something. It needed one more thing to help it pop. So I put those little tiny black squares in those intersections of rows and columns, and then around the edges, and that helped complete it. So that piece, there isn't necessarily a story behind it, except that the paper was so amazing. In that same series, there was another paper that had a spiral pattern, one that had kind of a Greek looking square spiral. I can't remember. There was one that was more like clouds and a little more random, but all that embossing was already in the paper, and I just decided to use it as it was.
Wow. Okay. So, and I think it's so awesome that you use paper. I was reading your About You section on your website, and you don't use any paints, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
All
So tell us about that. That is so amazing.
my mom had a decent collection of paper in her studio, and that was what I was playing with in those summers. And kind of where that idea was born, like how far could you push that paper medium to create something that looked like a painting? So all the color is in the paper. Once in a rare while, although I haven't done this for a long time, I did at the beginning sometimes use an underpainting, like many artists do, just to lay down kind of a
Right.
sienna background or something as an underpainting. But now I don't even do that. It's been a long time. I'll just use an inexpensive paper. I've even used like gift wrap tissue paper because it's expensive and it lays down the color. And usually you're not going to see any of that once I
Mm-hmm.
put all the layers down. So, yes, all the color is in the paper. There is no paint. I use a diluted acrylic medium. If anyone wants to try this, I recommend trying the gloss medium, acrylic gloss medium. That's just what it says on the label. There is an acrylic matte medium, but for some reason, it just doesn't seem to adhere as well as the gloss medium. And then when you're finished, I usually put uh, 2 or 3 coats of a UV protectant, either a spray or a brush on acrylic UV medium to help keep the paper from fading.
Right.
But
Okay.
even if you've used the acrylic gloss medium as your adhesive, and I usually use about 2 parts of the medium to 1 part of water. If you don't dilute it, it won't dry clear. You might get a cloudy finish, which could affect the color. So even if you've used the gloss medium as your adhesive, you can still spray it with a matte UV protectant in the end and still get a matte finish if that's what you want.
So tell us about the challenges that you faced when you started working this process and learning about paper from mom and her studio. As you became a professional artist, what were some of the challenges you faced in learning this process? So not only the challenges, what advice can you offer with that as well?
Start small, even as small as like a postcard size, a 4x6 canvas, and just play with the medium. I've discovered several things can affect the final color. It's like fabric. When it gets wet, it gets darker and then it dries, back to its original hue. The paper does the same thing. When you get it wet, it gets darker. And depending on how you've layered it, or even not layered it, but it just may not come back to its original color. It may be darker. And I've even discovered, for example, let's say I want to go for some kind of shade of green. If I put the yellow on top of blue, I'll get a different end color than if I put the blue on top of the yellow. I would say just practice, play with it, have fun with it. I would say the biggest challenge in this medium is blending, where I want a gradation of color, lighter to darker, because it's not like paint where you could just put in a little tint or a little shade and get another value of the same color. The paper doesn't blend. You can just layer it, but oftentimes there's still an edge that I'm not happy with. So there's a lot of trial and error sometimes, even on one piece, just to get the layering if there's blending involved. That's the single hardest thing. The second challenge I would say is when you mess up, sometimes it's laborious to scrape the paper off. If you were working with paint and it was a total disaster, you could just gesso over your canvas,
Right.
start over, or put another color on top and it hides the color underneath. But I've done my fair share of scraping paper off a canvas where I didn't want to dispose of the entire thing. It wasn't a total disaster, but a section needed changing and layering wasn't going to fix it. So that would be the second challenge, is striving to get it right the first time so you don't have to do that. Um, as to advice for other artists, especially a newbie, be careful who you listen to, I would say. Um,
So important.
Lots of free advice, and just filter that. Take it with a grain of salt. If you're entering shows, take good images and be very careful with the requirements. You don't want to get yourself disqualified because you didn't have a good image of your work, background, or not taken straight on, or whatever. You can find good advice online about how to get good images of your art, but get good images and make sure you follow the instructions. Because if a jury is looking at, say, 300 pieces and you've left something out or not done something according to instructions, they're not going to bother looking at it. So
Right.
be careful with your entries. If you don't, let me start there. If you don't make it, understand it's never personal. Juries vary. There's personal taste involved. What you entered may not have really fit the theme that they were going for, or there just could be a multitude of reasons that you weren't accepted, but it's never personal. So don't see it necessarily as a reflection of your skill or your vision. And then lastly, I would say you need to find a balance. And this is hard, I think, for all artists because we want our work to sell. But if you only paint to sell, you're not going to be painting from your heart. You're not going to be painting what you love. So paint what you love and enjoy it because you'll produce better art if you love what you're doing. And I think then you have a better chance of selling it than if your focus is merely on what will sell, what will sell. Although we do want to sell. So there's a balance there. But I would say if you don't love what you're producing, if you don't love what you're doing, it won't be as good a quality as if you love it.
Yes, thank you for sharing that because I cannot stress enough how important it is to just truly take the time to submit your work in a professional, clean manner. Because, and I speak this from experience as an artist and also on the other side of business, having an art gallery now, the amount of work that I see come through and I look and I'm going, well, they have so much potential, but they're missing the quality of submission. They're missing the quality of branding themselves for even just a contest or just to be a part of a exhibition, whether it's in person or online. Even as an artist like me, I've been declined many, many times. I had to learn quickly it's not personal, just like you said. And sometimes as artists, we're not always healed from rejection. And we take rejection very personal and we want to give up. And then we look, at art galleries in a negative light. Like, why would they submit fees? Or, why don't they want my work? I've been doing work forever. How did this work get over my work? And then the comparison game begins to happen. And we know comparison is like the thief of joy and what we do and how we're creating. I just say thank you for sharing that and bringing that up because it is so important as artists that we really have that balance of, okay, I'm going to take my time to create passionately from my heart. And I'm also going to take the balance and the time to submit my work as though I want to be seen in the value that I create. Somebody could create something that maybe may not be the masterpiece someone else would believe it is, but because they packaged it right, then the chances of them getting accepted into galleries, getting accepted into different partnerships or collaborations, or even getting noticed online is higher than just submitting something with maybe a background that has a lot of stuff going on. Just a clean image that's cropped and cut. That is so important for artists to know. And I'm glad that you brought that up as well.
Right. And I would say, just to add to that briefly, if you are accepted in a brick and mortar gallery, a physical location, along those same lines, just be professional. Show up when they're expecting you. Have your work as they requested it. With galleries, they just detest those sawtooth hangers. If you
Mhm.
bring something in with a sawtooth, they're just going to say, please leave.
Yeah.
So, D rings are preferable. It's got to be wired. Sometimes they want you to provide your own label. You can look online and see here's the proper format for a gallery label. So just be professional when you are bringing your work to a brick and mortar gallery. Be on time, be respectful of their time, have some humility, and do even a little background work. Know who it is you're going to be talking to, know the history of the gallery. Just even if that doesn't come up in conversation, just be prepared to deal with the people that are accepting your work in a professional way.
The best piece of advice that I ever got, I'll say one of the best advice is I remember I submitted for a gallery call with our local theater. It was a 12 by 12-inch abstract art piece. And when I brought it to the theater for the gallery there, the curator said to me, I thank you for wiring your painting, but you would really increase the value and the quality of this painting by framing it. And I was like, framing it? And I had been practicing art for 3 years, but I never framed any of my pieces. But I was buying the cheapest, canvases out there, the cheapest paint, because I was just like, I want to get my art out there. I just want people to see my work. I just want to get out there. And the curator looked at me and she goes, you did everything else, but I would have loved to seen this framed. And pretty much got turned away because of that. And so I was able to negotiate and make contact to bring my work back. And the piece ended up selling. It was one of two pieces of all 30 pieces in the gallery exhibit that sold. But that was probably the best advice that I've received. And to hear you say that, artists, if you're listening, I highly suggest that you invest in yourself and don't doubt anything. You may look at your work and go, should I put this in a frame? Should I put a mat on this? Should I put it on panel or whatever works for you? I say do it. Listen to what you feel to do with your work, because someone out there is looking for what you have to offer and what is available, because art is needed in every space.
I agree completely. It's well said.
I do want to ask you too, I know you gave advice on the end of creating with paper, right? But what advice would you give other artists who are considering entering into contests or looking to grow their confidence in their art careers?
Keep applying. Don't be discouraged by rejection. Again, I don't know if I need to reiterate that, but it really isn't personal. I love the New Mexico State Fair. They have a fine art building. Actually, there's 4 fine art venues in our state fair, and I enter that every year. Sometimes I'm rejected, sometimes I'm accepted. We're allowed to enter up to 4 pieces, but the jury changes every year. It's not the same people that jury it. There are things like that. Like you think, well, I was rejected last year, I'm not going to enter again.
Right.
Enter because the jury could be different, the criteria could be different. Like I mentioned, the personal taste of the jury is going to change. So if you're rejected once, don't let that, don't just cross that event or that gallery off your list. There's a website I use a lot called Cafe, CAFE. The initials stand for calls for entry. It's free to set up an account there. You can upload a portfolio with, again, good images, and then you can search in the calls. You can search by medium, watercolor, oils, collage, whatever. You can search by state. You can search by theme. Like there's hundreds of listings. Photography, sculpture, all medium is listed there. And sometimes if you're going to use that site or another site like it, there's another one, Juried Art Services, JAS, Juried Art Services. Those tend to be more like events, like craft shows, art shows. But there's so many places to look for calls for entry. I would recommend, if you use a site like Cafe, because there is usually an entry fee, and they have gone up, like everything in life. It's getting more expensive to apply there.
Oh,
But it
yeah.
could be anywhere from, say, like $20, I would say, up to like $45, depending on how many pieces you're going to enter or what the gallery is asking for. But it allows you to sometimes research the juror. You can Google the name if they list who the juror is. You can also go to the venue itself, to the gallery that's hosting or has the gallery that has created the call for entry. Look at that gallery. Say, do you think my work would fit in here? Is this a place that I want to, just do a little research. It only takes 5 to 10 minutes to decide if you're going to spend that money for the entry fee. Just do a little homework. But the other reason I like Cafe is because they have, like your gallery, there's a lot of online galleries. So you don't even have the expense of shipping your work. If it's a gallery across the country from you and it's an on-site show only, you would have to weigh very heavily. Is it worth it to pay the price for entry, the price of shipping, and possibly shipping back? If it doesn't sell, it's going to come back to you. So you would
Right.
want to consider those even more carefully. I enter a lot of online shows just for that advantage of not having to ship forward.
Yeah, and so you're saying, just to throw this in here, that artists, you don't have to limit yourself to just an art gallery. Step out the box, right? And apply for craft fairs and vendor events and local events, church events, coffee shop, put your art anywhere.
Yes.
Is there anything you want to tell your audience or share in addition to everything we've talked about today?
There's so much.
Take your time.
I would avoid comparing yourself to others. And really, I would say this just applies in every area of life. Just don't compare yourself, because social media especially tempts us to that, that just constant comparison. But as in regards to your art, I would say someone who you think might have less skill and they're accepted in a show and you're not, again, don't let that discourage you. Compare yourself to yourself. Where were you a year ago? And how have you improved? Where were you 5 years ago? If you're starting this week, enjoy it. Enjoy the process, and don't shy away from critique. In fact, just this week, I'm working on another abstract and I kind of got stuck. So I called my art instructor at UNM and said, something in here just doesn't feel right. I like where it is so far, but I don't feel like it's finished. Can you give me some feedback? And if they say, if you get feedback that's honest, it's possible it might sting a little bit, but listen to that. You're asking for that advice from someone with more experience, or just to get a second set of eyes on the work and absorb it. You don't necessarily have to take their advice, but don't blow it off immediately if it stings a little bit. Just press pause and say, is this valid? Would that really make this piece better? Because you ask someone with more experience, or you ask someone whose opinion you value, then take that and be willing to receive critique, especially if it's given lovingly and given respectfully. Yeah, don't be afraid to seek out critique. Even very experienced artists do that. Hopefully you'll be able to do that. Artistic life, get feedback and just absorb it.
Constructive, feedback as well is very helpful. It builds your confidence
Mhm.
because you just begin to learn what works for you over time too. And then sometimes we hit like little mental blocks while we're always creating. It never ends. And having that support system to be able to rely on and say, hey, like you said, I have this, or I'm working on this, or I just want to share some things with you, or even being a part of a community to mastermind some ideas and things that you're working on. I know that's one thing I want to build with Creatively Enhanced, which is our hub for the podcast and the gallery and all the other things that we have, is to be able to have roundtable sessions where other artists can come and say, I'm working on this. I need help. What do you guys think about this? And it's positive, healthy feedback with a small, intimate group of people, like no more than 5 or 6 people at a table, maybe 3, to come together and be like, yeah, I think that's amazing. You should do this, because that feedback is so helpful. And it's helped me many times as an artist, and even starting Creatively Enhanced, just to be able to navigate and grow and pursue what I felt in my mind was what I want to put on canvas, but maybe it doesn't make sense to everybody else, which is a whole nother topic. Because in your head, you're like, I want to create this picture, and then you start doing it, and it doesn't even come out to what you vision. So it's good to have people you can rely on and call on and say, hey, I need this. So thank you for sharing that advice as well. And do you have a success story, like something super successful? Maybe you sold a painting for thousands of dollars, or you had that connection. Any success stories you would like to share with us?
Two come to mind. One, we've lived in Gallup for about 6.5 years now, and I can say that even though I had a few shows prior to that, that it's just been this recently in the last, within the decade, that I've been selling at the local gallery. And I had a piece 30 by 30 of the what's called the White House ruin, a cliff dwelling in Canyon de Chelly. It's on the Navajo reservation. And that piece was special to me because my mother had started it and left it unfinished. She wasn't happy with it. It wasn't going well. She had ripped some of the paper off it.
Wow.
And so I inherited that canvas and
Mm.
had her source image and was able to finish it more correctly according to the source image. And I hung that in the first show I was accepted in at the local gallery. And there was a woman who is very involved in the arts here, who runs a lot of the art programs in Gallup, is married to a Navajo gentleman. And she loved that painting, and her husband bought it for her. And I still get moved when I remember this, because it was impressive to me, or just made an impression on me, that a Native person would buy a painting of a place that's sacred to them, but that was painted by, I say painted loosely, produced by a non-Native for his non-Native wife. That a non-Native rendering of a sacred Navajo space would be bought by a Navajo gentleman for his wife because she loved that piece. She told me recently she sees it every morning when she does her yoga. So to sell that piece in that context to these people in that way, that was very special. And secondly, I would have to say would be having a piece accepted in public art as a public art program for the Albuquerque International Airport. A work that I submitted for public art was bought by the state and is in the permanent collection at the Albuquerque Airport. So everyone going through TSA at the Albuquerque Airport, when you're standing in line and thinking about taking off your shoes, my work is there along with 4 other artists that were chosen for that particular space when the Albuquerque Airport was being remodeled. That was huge just to be accepted for that kind of purchase initiative. And I'll mention that in passing, Cafe, that website, the call for entry website, does also list public calls for art, or I should say for public. So if you are interested in having your art in public buildings, those also get listed. At least for New Mexico, they do. They get listed. The public art division lists their calls on that website as well. So you might find opportunities there to have
Nice.
in public space.
I'll have to check that out for myself. That's amazing. I've never done public art, but I've
That's
done everything else, but not
it's worth
public
it
art.
it's worth it to throw your hat in the ring, definitely. But that I will stress too, that's another place where reread the prospectus and read it again to make sure that you're crossing every T, dotting every I, because they'll get enough applications that if you haven't done it right, you'll just be discarded. They won't even look at it. So
Exactly.
um,
Exactly.
yeah.
Well, we're going to go ahead and close out our interview. Is there anything you want to share as far as upcoming projects or goals you're excited about? And how can the listeners follow and support your work?
I do have social media on both Instagram and Facebook. If you put in my name, Virginia Primozic Fine Art, it will pop up, or it should pop up on both Instagram and Facebook. I also have a website, which is also just my name, virginiaprimozic. One new thing I'm trying is a different substrate. I've always just done paper on canvas, but I have purchased a few bison skulls, and I'm putting the paper on the bison skulls and just trying to decorate these bison skulls just to try a new substrate, a new mixed medium. There's an events page on my website. So I think you're on there now. I'm sure you're on there now. I entered
Mhm.
your gallery on my events page. So that would be the best way to keep up with what I'm doing. And currently I'm preparing for some works for our state fair, because I do just love the fair ever since I was a kid. It's not just about the midway and the art, but there's pig races and
Mhm. And the food. Don't forget the food.
and food. Yeah, bread. Yeah, I just love the fairs. It's not till September, but the work has to be ready to submit by early August. So I'm
Right.
working on that right now.
Very cool. Thank you so much for your time today and sharing your story, your journey. It has definitely inspired me, and I have taken some notes because I have some things to look into. And
Thank you, Chantel. Again, thank you for the award and thank you for this opportunity.
it is an honor. You're welcome. Thank you for joining us for the inspiring conversation with Virginia Primozic, our second place winner of the Color Play Abstract Art Contest. Her unique vision and technique reminds us that creativity has no limits. Until next time, keep creating, keep connecting, and stay creatively enhanced.